One morning, Bill and Ben were arriving at Brendam Docks to switch the freight cars that had come in overnight. They weren't expecting too many. It was usually quite quiet in the mornings. They couldn't believe their eyes as they pulled into the yard. All the sidings were full.
"When did all these get here?" Bill asked, surprised. "I don't know," Ben replied, just as puzzled, "but somebody's been organising them too. Look, this train next to us is ready to go. I hope it's not another diesel."
The twins' hopes were dashed a moment later as the sharp blast of a diesel horn sounded out. As the disturbingly familiar black shape backed down towards them, the twins realised they had their answer. "I've been shunting these freight cars since 4 o'clock this morning," Diesel said as he came alongside. Angry expressions crossed the twins' faces.
"Well, you've done it all wrong. This isn't how we organise them at all."
"Of course it isn't. This is much more efficient. I assume you two are familiar with the concept of efficiency?"
This time it was Ben's turn to respond.
"What right do you have to come in here and interfere with our trucks?"
"Your Sir Topham Hatt has brought me in for a special project. I'll be here for a few months at least."
The twins looked horrified.
"It's going to get busy around here," Diesel continued. "I hope you two little engines can keep up with the work. From what I've seen, you know virtually nothing about managing trucks."
Bill and Ben were shocked. Before either of them could reply, Diesel tooted his horn and moved off. A few hours later, Bill shunted a load for the special project into a siding next to where Edward was waiting with the passenger train.
"You look a little upset, Bill," Edward observed.
"Eesh,"
Bill sighed. That was putting it mildly.
"It's that diesel,"
Bill complained.
"How dare he say we know nothing about trucks? We may be little engines, but we do know what we're doing."
Edward couldn't help getting a little bit worried. He knew that the twins had a penchant for causing trouble, and that Diesel wouldn't take too kindly to any of their tricks.
"You two do a good job," he said. "Diesel will only be here until the special project is finished. The sooner it's completed, the sooner he'll be gone."
Bill knew Edward was right, but he was itching to get back at Diesel, and he knew that Ben felt the same way.
"What is this special project anyway? If it's this important, surely we should know what it is."
"I wish I could tell you," Edward replied, "but I'm afraid I don't know myself, although I've heard that it may be another railway."
At that point, the guard's whistle sounded out from the rear of Edward's train.
"I must get going," Edward said, "but just don't let Diesel get to you."
Diesel had been right. Things did get busy over the next few months. Even though he didn't like it, Diesel had to rely on Bill and Ben to organise his trains for him. He was busy taking supply trains to the construction site. He took the trains from Brendam Docks along Edward's branch line, along the main line, then up the Little Western. At the end of the Little Western, he would disappear down a line that ran behind Duck and Oliver's shed, one that hadn't been used for a good few years. It wasn't just Diesel who was flat out busy. Bill and Ben were being worked off their wheels, having to keep up with the additional loads as well as their usual trucks. All three engines were so busy, in fact, that they didn't have time to be rude to each other. But Bill and Ben didn't forget what Diesel had said about them. A few months later, the project was close to completion and the twins found their workload easing off. They still didn't know what the project was though, as Diesel refused to tell them. One rainy autumn day, Ben shunted some more trucks onto the front of a train for Diesel to take. This train was longer than usual, but there was a reason for that. These were the last loads for the special project. Diesel sidled up a few moments later, looking dismayed at the size of the train. He had been expecting an easy run, with just 3 or 4 trucks and a brake van. "Surely such a long train isn't needed," he grumbled. Ben couldn't help grinning.
"These are the last loads for the special project. It's more efficient to take them all at once. I assume you're familiar with the concept of efficiency?"
Diesel spluttered. Before he could reply, Bill puffed up with the train of passenger coaches he'd been getting ready for Edward. He had overheard the conversation, and a cheeky grin crossed his face.
"You'll have to get moving, Diesel," he said. "I have to get these to the station for Edward's passengers."
Ben moved out of the way, and Diesel backed down angrily onto the trucks, bumping them hard. With a sharp blast of his horn, he moved off. Once the line was clear, Bill came up alongside Ben.
"He shouldn't have bumped the trucks. They're not going to like that,"
he observed.
"Well, I assume he knows what he's doing," Ben replied. "After all, he does know more about managing trucks than us little engines," he added cheekily. The inclement weather didn't do much to improve Diesel's mood as he headed towards the main line. He'd had enough of the twins and was glad that the project was finally over. Ahead was the spot where some workmen had been reballasting the track. They were using a new type of ballast, one that weeds couldn't grow in. Speed boards had been put up to remind trains to go slow on this section of track. Diesel applied his brakes as he approached the slow section, but the trucks would have none of it. "On, on!" they screamed, bumping him forward. Diesel could do nothing as he hit the unballasted track. His wheels left the rails and he skidded forward along the ground. With a sigh of relief he came to a stop, just metres from the edge of the cliff. The workmen quickly raised the alarm. Bill and Ben soon arrived to clear away the trucks that had remained on the track. Boko arrived with the breakdown train shortly after. Soon, all of the trucks had been put back on the tracks. Realization struck Bill as he and Ben pulled the trucks away. "Ben, we want to know about this special project, don't we?" "Yep." They still didn't know what it was. "Why don't we take this train to wherever it needs to go? That way we can see for ourselves." "Good idea, Bill." Their drivers agreed. Bill's driver ran up to a nearby signal box to arrange it with the dispatcher, and the line ahead was cleared. "Don't worry, Diesel," Ben called as they went past. "We'll manage your train for you." Diesel didn't reply. They shunted their train into a passing siding when they reached the scrapyard, then ran around to the front of it. They quickly headed off, eager for a run on the main line. They didn't get a chance to stretch their wheels all that often, and they were enjoying themselves immensely. "Come on, Ben," Bill said. "We'll show that Diesel how it's done." They made good time, cruising along the main line. Eventually they reached Tidmouth and crossed the junction onto the Little Western branch line. They had never been this way before, and they gazed in wonder at the beautiful ocean view that opened up before them. They were both feeling quite thirsty by the time they reached Haltrose Station, so they pulled up next to the water tower for a drink. Duck arrived with the passenger train a few moments later. He was surprised to see the twins there. "Hello, what brings you two down here?" he asked. Ben explained what had happened with Diesel. Duck couldn't help laughing. "Serves him right," the Great Western Engine said. "Do you know where he was taking these trains?" asked Bill. "Yes, he was heading up the old Aylesbury West branch, next to our sheds." "Thanks, Duck," the twins said as they headed off. They were excited as they headed down the line next to Duck and Oliver's shed. All those questions they'd had over the last few months, that wonder and curiosity that had been burning away within them, they were finally going to find out what was going on. The line ran through the forest for a few miles, then the trees began to open up. The sight that greeted their eyes was the last thing they had been expecting. Bill and Ben had thought themselves to be little engines, but compared to the red one that was just leaving, they were giants. They spotted another locomotive waiting with a train of supplies, just as small as the other one but painted blue. "Ben, there's another one over there," Bill pointed out as a little green engine came into view. Like the other two, this one had no number, just the word Aylesdale painted along his tender sides. Bill and Ben didn't know what to make of it. "Bill," Ben said, "I think someone's shrunk Gordon, James and Henry." The twins laughed, then left their trucks in the siding and headed off to be turned. As they were returning, the little green engine was backing down onto the hoppers atop the strange trestle the twins had passed earlier. "Good afternoon," he called. The twins braked to a halt. "Good afternoon," they replied. "Who are you?" asked Bill. "I'm Rex. My blue colleague over there is Bert. And you must be Bill and Ben." "You've heard of us?" Ben asked, surprised. "We have. That Diesel was in here a couple of days ago, the day we arrived. You should have heard him talking about how small engines are inefficient." "We have," Bill replied tersely. Rex chuckled. "Soon put that to rest, we did." The twins perked up. "Really? How?" "Showed him this here chute. All we have to do is shunt the ballast hoppers on top of it and open up the bottoms. The ballast just falls through to the trucks below." Sure enough, there were 4 full trucks parked underneath the hoppers. "What did Diesel have to say about that?" Ben asked. "Something about needing to leave or he'd be late," Rex replied. The 3 engines chuckled. "I'm afraid we've got to get going," Bill said. "But it was nice to meet you, Rex." "Pleasure to meet you too," Rex replied as the twins began to move off.